G'day Hammerheads, it's time to get sucky because today we are looking at the Milwaukee HammerVac. So this is a vacuum attachment for this drill right here. That's the 1-inch fuel drill that we saw recently. And the box says it is a dedicated dust solution, which is Milwaukee's way of saying it will only fit one bloody tool. Now that irks me somewhat because if we grab the next bigger hammer up, they have made the tabs that fit onto the drill slightly the wrong size, so basically it'll only fit on the one tool. Really, I mean, it looks like it should fit on at least one other, but hey, they want you to buy more of them, don't they? So back to the drill it's meant to mount on. Before we stick it on, you can see that this thing, the footprint is almost as big as the drill itself. Well, the footprint with the arm, a little bit bigger, but anyway, let's see how she goes. It slides on there. And then it attaches quite nicely. It's quite an easy and robust way to attach. So this thing has its own vacuum motor inside. As well as the little tapper thing. So they call that auto pulse. I'm going to call it tapper because auto pulse is just a weird thing to say in my mind. So basically this thing starts vacuuming out of this shroud up the end here whenever you rev the drill. And it keeps sucking for a few seconds after you stop drilling. As you can see, you've got to move the front handle out of the way. Now the business end is this dust shroud that is removable. You can get a couple of different sizes on there, and to help you get it on the right way, they got these two little white markers there to line them up. So you can set the depth as well. You've got this depth stop here, so that'll set your maximum depth. And if you want to have a little bit of drill bit poking out, you can set that one as well. And to empty this, you can pull these two buttons here, pull that out. Now emptying, bit of a pain. The manual doesn't actually tell you the best way to empty it. You can sort of just flip it over and pour some of the dust out, but as you can see there's this wall in here, so as well as being slow, you can't ever fully get all the dust out if you just tip it. So I find just pulling the actual filter out is the quickest way to get all the dust out of there. HEPA filter, as you can see, very effective. There's no dust on the clean side at all. This has been used a fair bit. And they reckon they're good for 1,500 holes before you got to replace them. So empty it out, whack that back in there, good to go. And the tapping is provided by this little hammer here. Which is supposed to knock any dust out of the filter, basically to keep your suction going, because you know every filter will get blocked up, so it's basically, instead of you whacking it, it's got a little tapper in there to keep the air flowing through that thing before the tub actually fills up. So this thing has its own motor. My first question was actually, how much of this battery does it use? So I went and did my standard runtime test, which is actually drilling granite and 12 by 70 mil holes. So let's see how this goes with and without the HammerVac on there. Okay, so we've done 16 holes and this thing is full. Okay, so the 1-inch fuel drill with the vacuum attachment, got to say that was bloody horrendous. This thing's super heavy. You got to empty that like every 10 holes. It's by no means dustless. So this up here was from in the HEPA filter, so that little HEPA knocking thing didn't do an awesome job. I guess it's better than nothing. But then all of this escaped the vacuum, like, you know, by no means dust free. So yeah, I mean, if you got to use it, I guess you got to use it, but geez, you'd want to avoid doing that. Alright, so here's our granite runtime chart. So this is all the drills that we've tested in this exact test. So without the HammerVac, she got 41 and a bit holes. So that is actually a new record in this chart, but then this is also the biggest battery we've had in this test. And with the HammerVac, she got 32 and a bit holes. So that's about a 22% decrease in runtime. But does it make it drill slower? Let's take a look. And no, not really. The drilling speed wasn't really affected, at least in this task. So during the runtime test, I noticed that, hey, this thing actually stopped sucking up the dust pretty quickly. So I emptied the dust catcher 4 times during that test. So it's about 10 of those holes on average before this thing feels like it needs to be emptied. So I figured, let's actually measure that. So I went and just drilled a bit of concrete this time and stuck a 16mm bit in there, 16, about 5/8. And I drilled horizontally so we could actually see the little piles building up. And that way just count up how many holes before it leaves a little pile. Look at that, terrible. Okay, so realistically about 5 of those holes, and gotta say, I expected a lot more than that. So if you ever saw this video from a while back,
nice. So I have a question.
Yeah.
How come I'm left with a pile?
Of the dust. So this is a little bit wet from all the rain, so it's not collecting quite as well as it will when it's dry.
Okay.
And then downward is going to be the most dust that's going to be left.
Fair enough.
I reckon it's actually not because it was just raining, but because somebody had already drilled like 4 holes before he got there. Anyhow, and you would have noticed the little timer up on the screen there. So if we count up the runtime before the HammerVac stops sucking, we get, I mean, just over a minute. And that's about the same as what it was in the granite runtime test as well. So after that drilling, I saved all the dust so we could weigh it up. But let's just see how easy it is to empty this thing. Yeah. So pulling the filter out actually lets the dust fall out, but you know, pulling the filter out is also a pain. And look at all that dust coming out of the filter itself. I thought the tappy thing was meant to, you know, clear that out. Drilling horizontally, it should be in the perfect orientation for the tappy thing to get all the dust out, and yet we have that much coming out. And I weigh all that dust, and 237 grams. Not very much at all. So that's actually including a little bit of extra drilling past that 5-hole mark. So realistically, it stopped working sooner than that. So, you know, you're looking at 200 grams. Look at that. The last one, it's just totally full. Terrible. So this thing held around 200 grams of dust. Let's see how much this whole thing weighs. So 6 kilos, or what is that, maybe 14 pounds or so, 6 kilos worth of tool it only holds 200 grams of dust in that thing before it starts sucking. This is a truly massive tool for not being able to actually do its job for very long. Honestly, Milwaukee, if you just made this dust chamber 5 times bigger, I think you would save a lot of guys a lot of screwing around. So there you go, guys. I gotta say, this HammerVac thing, probably the worst Milwaukee tool I have ever used. I reckon this thing is next to useless. If you're working in a fast-paced environment, or hell, even a kind of medium-paced environment, this thing is going to be an absolute nightmare because it stops working after about a minute of work. So, you know, drill 5 or 6 holes with something like that, it's not going to be sucking anymore. And as we saw, getting the dust out, bit of a pain. It is not easy to empty. You've got to actually remove the filter. So yeah, pretty disappointing there from Milwaukee. And Milwaukee hammers, they were historically, yeah, not the best, but this new gen absolutely rocks. Truly awesome hammer. But having used this combination here for like, I don't know, an hour or so in my testing, I can really see why Milwaukee decided to come up with their dedicated overhead drill, which has an integrated vacuum attachment built into the drill itself. Now that's not out yet. I am looking forward to getting my hands on one of those guys and trying it out, but I don't want to condemn this thing too much right now because this is actually the first onboard dust extractor I've tested on this channel. Maybe it's not just this Milwaukee one, but maybe it's just a factor of all of these onboard dust extractors that they're all just terrible, ungainly, useless devices. So I went and got a few other brands to compare to this guy, and we'll be seeing how they compare soon. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to be too harsh on this thing until I've properly evaluated the field, you know, because, you know, maybe they all suck. But I can tell you the comparison of the other brand dust extractors I've got, that'll be coming out pretty soon. So anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Do all that YouTube stuff. Really helps us out. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll scratch yous later.